Hi, I'm Simon, and I'm a misfit.
And I'm Adam, and I'm a misfit too.
Welcome back to our instructional video series of how to make concrete sculptures. Today, what we're going to do is show you how to do the metal work for a head. This is something we've prepared earlier, but what we're going to do is actually step you through the process step by step, each step along the way. So here is a head we prepared earlier. You can see we've made it with just the large mesh, the 1-inch mesh. The plan is ultimately to cover it in the finer mesh, which allows the cement to adhere to it. But for the purpose of this class, we're going to stick with just the big mesh. We're going to move on, do the whole body with the big mesh, and take all of the fine mesh in one class afterwards.
Okay guys, now we're gonna take some measurements. So we find the floppy tape very easy to measure the head because the head is curved and it goes around and goes around like this, and it's a lot easier. Okay? And 2 sticks of wood, 2 straight sticks of wood. The first measurement we're going to take is from the chin to the top of the head.
So this is 26 centimeters.
And the next measurement we're going to take is from one side of the head to the other side of the head. Right.
15 centimeters.
Okay. The next measurement we're going to take is from side to side again, but not the width. We're going to get a half circumference.
34 centimeters.
So the next measurement we're going to take is from the top of the lip, which the mouth is what sticks out the furthest on the face, to the back of the crown of the head. So we're going to take the width between these 2 points.
That's 23 centimeters.
So now we're going to take a measurement from this point here, right at the eyebrows, across to the back of the neck.
That's 50 centimeters.
And last but not least, the circumference of the head.
At the widest part of the head. 59 centimeters.
And these are all the measurements that you're going to need to do the wire mesh on the head.
Okay, so while we're making a head, I want to point out a really, really important observation. First of all, any head, for any face, the eyes fall directly in the center from top to bottom. Secondly, you can section the head into 3 different parts. The top part is exactly the same height as the middle part and the bottom part, from the top of the nose to, from the bottom of the nose to the bottom of the chin. These are all equal dimensions. And this is really, really important to keep in mind, because when you're making your head, you can check these. You can check that the top of your head is not too big or not too small, for example. Or the distance from the brow down to the nose isn't too big. This really helps you stay on track and make sure you don't make things out of proportion.
And it's super important as you go through each step to keep checking your reference points, because you don't want to get to the very end of your project and see that it's all out of whack because of the first or second step that you didn't get correct.
Exactly, yeah. So the very first step to getting started off is we take the measurement from the circumference that we took when we were doing our measurements, which is 59 centimeters. Now, as always, we want to make the metal mesh part of the head a little bit smaller than how it's going to end up. So I want to reduce that measurement from 59 centimeters. I've calculated 54 centimeters, which is about 10%. So I've cut a strip. A strip of 54 centimeters takes me from here to here. But I've got an excess of 2 squares. Why do I do this? Because when I attach it, this allows me to overlap and create a nice, robust, secure connection. If I was to attach it here, for example, it would be pointy and not look very natural at all. In terms of the metal mesh, we always leave these prongs, and that allows us to tie the piece together. So I measured 54, but I've left an allowance to overlap. And this overlap allows us to make a nice circle, which is nice and strong. If we tied it at the very end here, for example, we'd have a pointy part. Always tie every piece of wire It may seem a bit monotonous and a bit boring, but actually what it means is that the pieces of the sculptures that you make, they'll be very, very robust and strong. It'll hold the strength of cement and won't be flimsy. So we have a cylinder now, but we want to shape it in the way that a head is naturally shaped. A bit wider at the back, a bit more narrow at the front. At this point we need to decide where the front and the back of the head is. I'm going to make this center line just where we've attached at the back and find the exact point of the center at the very front. You can do that by counting the number of squares. Okay, we just spray painted the first step. This allows you to see how we're working with the second step. So the second step, basically we are going to be adding a strip of mesh, which was the 50 centimeters we measured from between the eyes all the way to the back of the neck. And this strip here is going to basically form a reference point for that shape, that from the profile, the side profile. This is the side profile of steps 1 and 2 combined. From the brow to the top of the head is 1/3 of the total head. So you can check this step to make sure that you've not attached this part too high or too low. Everything is secured nice and tightly, as you can see, and centered directly in the center of the front and directly in the center of the back. I can't emphasize how important it is to keep this strip directly in the center, because it'll help us keep symmetry with each step following this. Now the third step, we're going to attach a strip across the top of the head from the temple around to the other temple, and that's going to complete the reference points on the top of the head. So in order to do that, we're looking for the center from front to back. By counting squares. Finally, we're going to attach at the top also, and in doing so, we're going to make sure everything is lined up perfectly so that everything is squared with right angles, and this makes sure that the shape of the head is symmetrical all the way around. And when we tie these ties, we do so without distorting the previous piece. So be very careful not to bend too strongly the wires. This is the top-down view. You can see that as we've attached this strip, none of these wires have been pulled out of shape. Everything's nice and straight, and this is what you're aiming for. Now once we have the first 3 strips in place, a nice little trick is you run a wire from one end of the head where the temple is to the other. So with Adam's face, we measured from point to point at 15 centimeters. Always we want to leave an allowance, as I said, about 1.5 centimeters. So basically we can take the measuring tape and measure this wire at 12 centimeters and tie it in. And as you can see here, it gives us more of a natural shape of the head now, where the face part is a little narrower than the back. So now the next piece we're going to add is a little strip which is going to put this neck strip in the correct place. So as always, we find the center of our strip. And as you can see, Adam's tying it on an upwards angle, and that gives us a nice natural shape for the back of the neck also. So this is now what the piece looks like with this strip attached. The only final step now, before moving on to the face, is just adding a few little pieces to close off these 4 holes and make the head part of it nice and strong. When we attach, you want to do it diagonally, like this. the diagonal allows us to get the double curvature. So the curve in this direction, but also the curve in this direction. So now we have a completed head. We're going to move on to doing the face. The very first step to the face is we take a strip 1 square wide. We attach it basically at the center mark. So in order to determine the size of this strip, the best way of doing it is you take the measurement of the top of the head to the bottom of the chin, which in this case is 26 centimeters. Keeping in mind we want to take 1.5 centimeters off the bottom and 1.5 centimeters off the top, and basically just test out your strip. If your strip is too short, you'll find that the measurement from the top and the bottom is obviously too short, and too long if it's too long. Something very important to keep in mind is depending on whether the mouth is open or if the mouth is closed will determine how long this strip should be. So an open mouth, a more elongated jaw, and a closed mouth is basically, in our case, how we've measured it. So here's the side profile of the head. You can see the chin strap attached. It's angled slightly forward and more or less aligned with the eyebrows. From the front view, you can start to get a sense of the shape of the face. You can push it in a little bit to get a shape of the chin and also the cheeks. Before we go on, it's very, very important to check measurements. So take a measurement from the top of the head to the bottom of the chin, just to double check that in the process of adding this chin strap, you haven't made a mistake with the proportions. We want it to be in line with the measurements that we've taken of your head. Now, in order to continue the face, it's just 3 very, very simple steps to continue with the mouth and the nose. Now imagine the lower lip. If you add a strip that goes along from the jaw, down and then back up, and for the upper lip, exactly the same but in the opposite direction, you get a sense, if you're to open and close your mouth, how that these 2 strips will interact. Now we're going to start with the lower lip. Again, always finding the center point of the strip and the center point of the actual face to attach. This helps us keep symmetrical. So here's the side profile of the face again. This line here gives us a rough idea as to where the lip is, but these loose prongs I've bent further up to make the actual lips. And for the top lip, we're doing exactly the same thing but in the reverse direction, in the opposite direction. So here we have our side profile with the bottom and top lips attached. Something to keep in mind, very often people who are inexperienced with this will either make the lips too far out or too far in. Basically, you want to be more or less in line with the forehead. So the final step is adding 1 more strip to complete the nose area. Here we have a strip which is too wide and as long enough, basically the same length as what you would have used for the lips. So in order to do that, you bend it in half first. This here is going to be this part of the nose. Make it very, very close to that wire. A little bit further away as you move down and a little bit further away again. You just put a bend in. Exactly the same on the other side. Close to the nose here, a little bit further away, out a little bit. So this is the bottom of the nose, which is a little bit wider than the top of the nose. Now with this piece, we simply just add it on. So this is the completed head. You can see we've left, you can push the cheeks in a little bit to create cavities for the eyes. But more or less all of the features are here. We've got the nose, we have the lips, everything's in proportion, and this is exactly what you should be aiming for. So thank you for watching this video. If you have any questions, leave a comment on the bottom and we'll get back to you. I hope now you know how to make a head, so In the next video, we're going to move on and do the torso. Until then, have fun making your head, and we'll catch up soon. See you later.
Till the next time.